I recently made a Facebook post that said, what you put off today, you must handle or deal with tomorrow. The thing I love most about making posts like this is it starts conversation. It gets people thinking differently, and it also gets some challenge at the same time. So, on today's Powerback episode, I thought we could talk about this. Let's dissect it because the truth is what you put off today, you must handle or deal with tomorrow. And that cycle continues until you choose to do something differently. Your choice is to pause and reconnect, to handle the thing, or to avoid it altogether. So if you tend to get overwhelmed by your to-do list or aren't really sure where to begin in the first place, today's Powerback episode is going to help give some clarity, some guidance, and honestly, a little swift kick in the mental ass to help get that shit done. By the way, if this is a topic that's really resonating with you, feeling overwhelmed, feeling kind of stuck, feeling like, gosh, I'm not really sure where to focus my time or my energy, and maybe I just shut down because of it, then my December mindset class might be right up your alley. So on December 7th, this particular mindset class is focused on going from overwhelmed to focus, to creating calm from the chaos, to getting order, direction, focus, so you know what to do next. And I know this runs in December when things are a shitstorm to begin with, but they don't have to continue to be that way. In fact, this is really going to help set you up for a great beginning of the next year and probably even be able to enjoy the month of December along the way. So, if this is of interest to you, registration is open. You can go to LauraAura.com and grab your seat today. All right, let's come back to this Facebook post. I'm going to read it again to you. What you put off today, you must handle or deal with tomorrow. And like I said, I like putting these types of posts out because one of my favorite things to do is to scratch your brain and get you to start seeing, thinking, and considering things for what they could be, right? To acknowledge what we're all thinking and feeling, but maybe don't have the space or the support to be able to vocalize it. Or maybe you just haven't even processed it, right? My posts are intended to get you thinking, to open up the idea of possibility. And that's what this post did. And I think it's interesting the feedback that has come from it is a mixed bag. And, honestly, most of my posts are like that because you can see very clearly the ones that are open to change and evolution, the ones that are just starting to wake up, and the ones that are going to fight for their fucking limitations. And you know what? That's okay. I'm not for everybody, but I'm certainly for a lot of people. And you, my friend, are my people. I know that because you're here and you're hungry for evolution, for change, for happiness in your life. So I want to share a couple of the comments that came back from this. And the overwhelming sense is I needed to hear this today. More often than not, I would say 70% of the time, these are the types of comments that I get, which I love because again, it's getting you to like acknowledge something that's going on inside of you. It's opening up your idea that I can have something in a different way. There is possibility that I didn't consider before seeing or hearing this. And then you, my friend, you're the one that chooses whether you do something with it or not. You're the one that chooses if a shift, if a change, if an evolution, if an up leveling, if a relaxation happens, right? You get to ultimately choose that. So overwhelmingly, Diana said, this is exactly what I needed. Thank you for sharing this. Kira mentioned, thanks for reminding me that I need to clean my house. And if I just do it today, it'll be done. Absolutely. Right. Like we tend to put off the things that we don't want to deal with. We tend to put off the things that our minds make 10,000 times larger than what they actually are. And a lot goes into this, right? And that's what we're going to kind of unpack together today. Now, this one's really interesting. And this is part of why I wanted to record this episode, because this gal says it's not always about doing things or being productive. I could not fucking agree with you more. Absolutely. And that's why this episode is titled Pause, Handle, or Avoid, because it's not always about pushing through. It's not always about forcing yourself. It's not always about hustling through and grinding and like knocking shit out. Sometimes it's really about rest. Sometimes the most productive thing that you can do is nothing. Another comment said that the toughest part is prioritizing all the things. Yes, I fucking hear you loud and clear. So we're going to touch on that today as well. And Lynn shared a quote that someone else had told her that said, resist today, regret tomorrow. And in some cases, that may absolutely be true. If it's, especially if it's things that you wake up and you're like, damn it, it's still here because I need to handle it. So what's going on here is we have stuff to do. I News alert, you've got a to-do list. You've got roles, you've got responsibilities, you've got people that rely on you, you've got stuff that's going on in your career, you've got clients that are waiting for you to do things, a never-ending email list. Like it just doesn't seem to fucking end, does it? And I just want to acknowledge that it's not always about puppy dogs and rainbows. It's not always about things being perfectly in place. Rather, it's learning how to better equip yourself to handle these situations when they do pop up. Because that, my friend, is the truth. Things are not going to go away, but we can choose how we respond to them, how we show up for them, how we navigate through these situations so that we can have a better situation as a whole, so that we can be more at peace, so we can be more grounded, more focused, have time for the things that we actually want to do instead of feeling like you're just in this perpetual fucking hamster wheel, just checking off boxes, throwing it behind you and running into the wind. When we're putting things off, I mean, there's a million different reasons, right? Sometimes you're just tired. I mean, it's not always this big fancy scientific explanation. Sometimes you're just fucking tired. Sometimes you're overwhelmed. Sometimes it's the bigness of it or the details or I don't know where to begin. So, what do you do when there is so much going on? When the tasks are there, whether it's one thing or 100 things, whether it's something really small or really fucking big. In every situation, you have a choice. And I know it doesn't always feel like that. And I know in certain circumstances and situations, it may look and feel a little bit different. This isn't a blanket statement that says, like, you should always just be able to do this or that. I get that there are different circumstances, but at the end of the day, at the end of the moment, the decisions and how you handle things, how you show up for things, and what kind of energy you bring to it, that, my friend, is up to you. So, what do? You have three options. Your options are to either pause and reconnect, to handle the thing, figure it out and get it done, or to avoid it altogether. So let's unpack those together, right? Because I want to make sure that you see and feel the difference between the energy of these things and know that no one's coming to like smack the back of your hand or be like, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. We're not, we don't do that. We don't should around here, right? This is about conscious awareness starting today, about the next time you start to get overwhelmed by your to-do list or all this shit keeps piling up, that maybe, just maybe, you'll remember Laura in your ear saying, I have a choice. I have a choice on how I'm going to respond to this. And now I'm going to actively choose. You know, the Powerback process, if you've been around, if not, go back a couple of episodes. It's sprinkled throughout everything. You know, and if you don't know, I'm going to tell you right now that awareness 1,000% has to be the first thing you focus on. It doesn't matter what circumstance you're in or what's going on. When you start to notice how you're feeling in your body. Where are you feeling it in your body? Notice the thoughts that are happening in your head. Notice what's going on around you. It's about like truly kind of getting back into this moment and saying, okay, I can see things more clearly. I may not have all the answers. I may not know what to do next. I may not, have this perfect crafted plan, but at least I fucking notice it. Because when you notice it, then you can do something about it, with it, or for it. So, one of your first options is to pause. Now, I love this. And this was one of the comments about it's not always about being productive. 110 fucking percent. I will march to the beat of that drum any single day because continuing to force yourself through things, pushing through, figuring things out, hustling, staying up late, getting up early, knocking stuff out, like that is not sustainable. While there are periods of sprinting, I'm a huge fan of like getting in and knocking shit out, right? Like I feel very productive when I'm doing that, but not when I come from a space of I have to do this. I need to force myself through this. I'm grinding through this, like this climbing up the side of the mountain. Rather, I'm in flow. I look at hustle like active flow. It is flowing through me. I am excited about this. I might still be working through some of the kinks. I may not have all the answers, but you know what? I'm in active flow and I'm willing to lean in and do this. But sometimes your body just needs to rest. Resting is an essential part of your health toolkit, of your mindset toolkit. This is the place where you get still with things. Like I know that thing, that pile is sitting over there, or the to-do list is going off, or the emails are stacking up. And I know it can be really unnerving to stop when you know that there is so much waiting on you. But I also know that eventually you will burn out if you do not stop. And when you choose to pause, you're taking your power back in that moment to say, you know what? I acknowledge all that shit over there. It doesn't super feel great to not be like knocking that out right now. But what do I need right now? What does my body need right now? I need a fucking break. And that might be 5 minutes. It might be 50 minutes. It might be for the next week. That's the thing that we forget, is that a pause and a break gets to be what it feels right to you. I'm not saying you need to go on a trip to Bali for 6 weeks. I mean, if you can and you want to, fucking by all means, send me some pictures. But resting, pausing, sometimes is sitting down for an hour. Sometimes it's going for a walk around the block. Sometimes it's having coffee with a friend. Sometimes it's reading 20 pages of a book that you can't seem to grab. Hell, sometimes it's literally just sitting somewhere and staring into the abyss, right? Like you get to decide what pausing looks like. But the most important thing about pausing is this gives you a chance to reconnect, right? Because when you're consistently all over the place, you're playing tug of war, you're trying to figure all this stuff out, you are so out of your body, my friend. Your body wants to be a part of the creation that is you. It wants to be part of what you're creating together. But when you're consistently separated, it's like trying to find your best friend in a crowd, like, where are you? Put your hand up. What color shirt are you wearing? So when you pause, you get to reconnect. And when you get to reconnect, you can process. And the rest period, again, it gets to be whatever you need or want it to be. But I always find that when I rest, I get clarity. Hands down, almost every single time, because when you're consistently hustling through things, there is no capacity to receive that information that you're trying to find, the clarity that you're trying to find, the answers you're trying to find. It doesn't have any room to come in. But when you're still, when you pause, it's like, oh, I have sat long enough for this information to have space to come in. Pausing also gives you a chance to just rest, to refuel your body, to put good things in your body, to wear clothing that just feels good to you, to just sit out back by yourself for 3 minutes and take a big deep breath. And when you do this, you get back in the driver's seat. You feel more in control. You feel more rejuvenated. You feel more focused. You feel more like, you know what? Taking a big deep breath. I've had a few minutes to collect myself. I've had a little while to rest. And I remember that I'm capable. Resting and pausing allows you to remember that you are capable, because you get back in yourself, you're back in the driver's seat, and you know that you can do this. I know that you can do this. But if you don't stop long enough to remember that, it's going to continue to feel like shit. So the second option that you have is to handle it. Handle the situation, handle the list, go through the things that need to be done, make the phone call, send the emails, like whatever is calling of you, whatever needs your time and attention, is to handle it, because the alternative is to avoid it. And we'll get to that in a second. But by handling things, we get it done, right? Like life is full of to-dos, and some days have more than others, and some days have substantially less than others. They're never going to go away. Like there's always going to be something or someone that needs something of you. If you're in a business, if you have a career, if you have a family, if you have friends, if you have any kind of anything, at some point there's going to be a to-do list. So sometimes you got to pause, recognize like, okay, I'm going to get back into myself. I got this shit to do. I like to give myself a little pep talk, right? Like this works actually really well. And I also like to trick myself. I'll tell you about that in a second. But giving yourself a pep talk helps you to like, you know, there isn't always going to be somebody that just shows up and gives you a hoorah and tells you like you've got this. You've got to be that person for yourself. You've got to be the one that says, you know what, we're in this together. I've got this. I can do it. The sooner that it's done, the sooner that it's done. And I'm absolutely capable of handling these things. We have a very short amount of time to make a decision on something before our brain wants to get involved. Mel Robbins has coined it as 5 seconds. We have 5 seconds to decide before the chatter in your brain wants to pop up, say hello, and take you down a rabbit hole. So the game that I like to play with myself, I trick myself by starting something tiny. So especially if you're feeling overwhelmed, right? If you've got a lot of things to do, don't really know where to start, something that I find really helpful is to do one tiny thing. Because usually when you get overwhelmed, you shut down and then you see all the things and it gets bigger, right? It feels heavier in your body. So I like to try one thing at a time. The other day, I had been walking past the same pile of laundry for like 5 days. Okay. And it was overwhelming me. My schedule had been kind of dense. I was feeling kind of spent in my own brain. And it felt like doing this laundry was one more thing. And one day I came home and I looked at it again and I was like, okay, what I don't handle now, I have to deal with tomorrow. And that perpetuates, that continues until something changes. So, what if I trick myself? What if I just grab 2 shirts and I put those away and I see what happens? And I did that. I put the 2 shirts away. I walked back over and I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad, actually. I could do 2 more. See, this pile was really big and that was overwhelming to me. And I didn't know where to start. And it was too much, right? It seems like a simple thing. And I know that you can relate to this. It seems like such simple bullshit. But the reality is our body is overstimulated and we need to guide it and help it. So I grabbed 2 more shirts. I put those away. I grabbed a pair of pants. I put those away. And before I knew it, I had momentum. And not too long after that, I looked over and the pile was gone. And it's in moments like that that I'm like, gosh, I have so much more power than I give myself the opportunity to access. And remembering that I have these very simple tools at my disposal where I get to play with this. I don't have to be like, I'm coming in and I'm putting away the whole fucking pile right now. And sometimes I do need that energy, right? Let's be honest. But in this particular moment, I needed softness with myself. I needed a plan. I needed some play. And the pile got put away. So start to play with how can you play with yourself? I mean, yeah, there's that too. But how can you trick yourself in the best of ways? How can you motivate yourself, right? Again, you have to be your own best advocate. So, what are some things that have worked for you in the past to help you get through these kind of dense moments? This is also a really great place and time to brain dump. So much of the energy and anxiety comes from trying to remember everything. So when you go to handle things and your brain's like, I don't even know where to begin, get it all out on paper. Get it out of your head. Stop trying to remember all the things. Get it on paper. Because when it's on paper, it has been downloaded. That immediately gives you capacity back in your brain. And then that gives you the opportunity to look at everything and say, okay, what is most important? Where can I begin? What's one next step that I can take to build momentum? Where can I start? And if you're still not sure, look at, is there something with a deadline? And if you're like, everything has a deadline, everything's on fire, everything needs to be on. Okay, you know what I want you to do then? I want you to close your eyes. I want you to wave your finger around and I want you to fucking put your finger on one of them and then start there. Right? Like, again, there isn't like this magic formula to say, like, oh, here's exactly how you could or should prioritize. You know, if we're looking at deadlines, if we're looking at order of operation, meaning like this needs to happen before that type of thing, those types of technicalities come into play. But when everything is equally as important, close your eyes, swing your finger around, put your finger on one of them and start there, right? Like let it be simple. Let it be that easy. Another tip that I like to share is to clump like activities together. So, for instance, if you need to make a bunch of phone calls, make a bunch of phone calls at the same time, not simultaneously, you know what I mean? But like make a call and then the next one and the next one. If you need to follow up with some people through email, sit down. Okay, is there any other emails that I need to send? Okay, let's start with that. I'm going to send all these emails out at the same time. Because when you start doing similar activities together, you can really build momentum because you're already in that space. You're already doing that type of activity. So it's easier to tack on more. And then one of my favorites is asking for help. Look, I know you're a fucking rock star. We don't need to like discount that by any means, but you're also a human being. And asking for help is a superpower of its own. Delegate a task that you don't need to do that someone else in your house can do. Ask for help in your business. Go to someone on your team and say, hey, I could really use some help with this. Is this something that you could take on? You don't have to be the one that does all the things. I feel like you need to hear that again. You, my friend, do not need to be the one that does all the things. And the last thing that I want to say about this is sometimes we also just need to be very realistic with ourselves. Like, are all the things on your to-do list right now realistic? Like, if you're like, I want to redesign my entire website by Friday, um, excuse me, miss, it's not going to happen. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's not going to happen, right? Like, what is realistic? Okay, I want to rebuild my website. What is one next step that needs to happen for me to be able to do that? Can I set a more realistic timeline to say, okay, maybe I can't do this in a week, but I could maybe do it in a month? Is that even realistic? Look at your schedule, right? Like we tend to stack things on top of stacked things. And that creates this weeble wobble tower of terror Jenga nightmare that adds so much extra stress and anxiety on top of us. Also, I just got a super solid visual of that. And if someone could illustrate what I just explained, that would be phenomenal. So look at everything. I realize that there are some things and some seasons where, yes, everything is equally as important and it needs to happen now. But I also know that we set unrealistic expectations for ourselves and then we want to kick ourselves in the ass. So let's not do that today. Look at your list and say, okay, what can be moved out? What can be shifted? And most importantly, what can be delegated? All right, to round us out today, the last option that you have is to avoid it. Much like my pile of laundry that I avoided for a few days. Honestly, at first, I was like pissed off at myself about it. And then I thought, you know what? This doesn't matter. Like, does it matter to me that my things are put away? Yes. Does this matter about who I am? Does it decide my character? Does it stop me from running my business or living my life or loving on my husband or my son? No, it's a fucking pile of laundry. So start with releasing this shame, guilt, blame stuff that you're putting on yourself because that's not helping the situation. Okay. Let's release it. So after I release the laundry situation, I'm like, this doesn't mean anything other than I've been overwhelmed and I simply haven't gotten to it yet. Period. Now, normally my husband jumps in and will put it away because he knows that when shit piles up like that for more than like 2 or 3 days at a time, that's a signal that I'm overwhelmed. But he himself had a lot to do. He had a lot of tasks on his plate and he was feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So, you know what? The clothes sat there. But eventually, I've got to move forward, right? It's when we stay stuck and stagnant and spinning in this mud of like, everything's hard. Everything's always piling up on me. I always have this to-do list. It's always everyone else's fault. Like that shit is not serving you. Okay. Avoiding is just simply pushing off everything and stacking it up against you. It's feeding the fire of the old stories of everything is hard. Everything's always my responsibility. Everything's always my fault. See, I can't do this. And where you're going, those stories cannot be true anymore. Okay. Avoiding is creating so much more stress and anxiety. It's reinforcing that you don't have enough time and you'll never get ahead. And we all know that it leads straight to shutdown. And again, that happens, right? Like that's going to happen to me again. I know that. One, it's one of my tendencies. So I'm aware of that. So I can see it coming. Right. But two, it gives us this chance to say, like, you know what? I can see things for what they are. I don't have to make it mean anything. And I don't have to keep myself in this cycle. So, with all that being said, you have three choices when it comes to your to do list. You can pause, feel into it, connect with yourself, simplify things, rest. You can handle it. You can get a plan, you can brain dump it, you can point it with your eyes closed, or you can map it out with one, two, threes. You can knock the shit out. And I promise you, 9 times out of 10, everything that you're like, this is going to take so long, I don't know how to do it. It takes like a fraction of the amount of time than your brain is trying to tell you that it takes. Okay. Total side note. So you can handle it. You can get a game plan. You can knock it out and finish these things so that you don't have to deal with it tomorrow. Or you can avoid it. You can continue to live the old stories. You can continue to push through things. You can continue to shut down and not move forward. I can promise you that you will do all three. Why? Because you're a human. We're not about pointing fingers or shaming or blaming. Look, when you avoid things, you learn, right? The next time you do that and you hear my voice and you're going to be like, oh, here I am again. Okay. But I don't need to make this mean anything. But I also know that if I want to make a change, I have to make a change, right? I hope that the next time that you're like, oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, you know what I need to do? Just sit and like get it out of me. I hope that you lean in and you're like, gosh, this is such a healthier way to handle this. I hope that when the to do list keeps coming in and the clock seems to be ticking, you're like, you know what? I can handle this so much better if I have rested. If I just go for a walk, if I drink a cup of coffee on the porch, if I listen to a chapter of my audiobook, if I dance like a fool to my favorite song for 5 minutes, I will be so much better equipped for it. You have the ability to choose. You have the ability to make change. And when you dedicate yourself to trying something new, leaning into the temporary discomfort and choose something differently, then you get a different outcome. And that, my friend, is a pretty cool sweet spot. If this kind of topic is really ringing true for you, again, the December mindset class is on going from overwhelm to focus. So we're going to use some of these methods and some more in that class to help you really gain some focus and clarity on where to focus your time, your money, your effort, and your energy moving forward. I hope that this kind of content is tickling your fancy in the best of ways. If there are topics that you would love to hear more about, please reach out to me. I'm super active on social media. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram using @LauraAura. Send me a DM, connect with me, and tell me what you loved. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.